Good morning, and welcome back to Good Morning Tobago. The question still lies, is 50 million enough for Tobago after the oil spill recovery? The question is continuing to circulate as many persons are being asked, do you think 50 million is enough? Now, last week we heard from Senator Lawrence Hislop while he was in the House, and he indicated that he believed that 50 million was indeed enough. But we had standing in as well independent Senator Dr. Remy, who indicated that 50 million was clearly not enough, echoing the sentiment of many Tobagonians. And as we have this conversation this morning, we're going to go a bit further into whether or not 50 million can truly cover the expenses that have been incurred by the THA after the oil spill fallout. And to have this conversation with me this morning, I have the privilege of sitting with Mrs. Petal-Ann Roberts, who is the Chief Management Accountant, and Dr. Faith B.Yisrael, who is the Deputy Chief Secretary of the THA. Now, this morning is quite interesting because it's not very often we have the Management Accountant of the THA that would be able to sit in with us and give us the details. Because a lot of the times what we get is opinions, but very few times we are able to get the figures. So this morning we get figures, and I am grateful for that opportunity to clarify a lot of questions that the public may have. Now, from what we know, specifically sitting on the angle of the media, is that the Tobago House of Assembly, by means of the Division of Finance, would have submitted a request for 153 million to cover expenses incurred based on the oil spill, right? And I want you, Ms. Petal-Ann, to let us know what was that request like from central government initially to send in that request for the finances. What was that conversation like?
Good morning, Tobago, and good morning to the wider viewing public. Morning, Chanel, Dr. Faith, good morning. Right, so every year we have what we call a mid-year review, where we look at the finances of the Tobago House of Assembly, as a matter of fact, not only the THA, across the government, and we look at, because our budget is done for a year, we look at the middle of the fiscal year to see what are the needs because of the changes in the environment. As you know, we had an extraordinary, unfortunate incident, and in light of that, we would have made a request in addition to the usual request. Right. So this year we made a request of $300 million to the government, and that included the oil spill related expenditure up to September. So it was from February to September 2024. The amount was 153.5. Some of it was actual, because at the time when we made the request, it was March. So we were able to give the government February and March actual figures, and then we projected April based on the activities at the time, and we went right up to September. So that's how we came up with 153 million. The actual at the time was approximately 48 million, February and March. Included in that mid-year request was monies pertaining to the contractors. As you know, from prior to fiscal 2021, we owed contractors. We had an audit, and the audit sort of cleared some of the contractors, and they gave us the recommendation that we can pay for some of these projects. So we asked the government if we can have $100 million, because out of the 260, we were not able to make most of the payments. As a matter of fact, we made a payment out of the menial allocation for works. Works only was allocated about 54 million. We were still able to find and squeeze 26 million to pay contractors. So we were asking the government for an additional 100 million to see if we can pay contractors. Also, we had asked the government for about 46 million to assist in deferring the cost of our overdraft interest. As I don't know if you're aware, because we don't get our allocations or quarterly in advance, we have to utilize an overdraft facility to pay for our recurrent and development program expenditure, maybe about 1 month in each quarter, because we don't get all the monies. We get 2 months and then 1 month. And in light of that, the overdraft interest on our First Citizens bank account is very high. 1 year it was about $10 million. So we asked the government, this is a non-appropriated expenditure. So we asked the government, can you assist us in defraying this? Because on the fund account, we would not be in a positive position at all times, even if we get the releases for the month, because the overdraft interest is deducted from the releases that are in the account. So therefore, we asked the government for that. All we received was $50 million for the oil spill. After the request, though, we did have conversations with technocrats at the Ministry of Finance, and they asked us for further details because that request did not have, it didn't itemize the suppliers and contractors that we owed. The ministry required additional information. And remember, this was in April when the ministry contacted us. So obviously, we would have only had actual for February and March. Remember, by the time the mid-year review and the Standing Finance Committee met, it would have been June. So we have April and May invoices to still pay. So the $50 million, I believe, was only for February and March. Right now, for April, it's about $20 million. And May, it starts to decrease to somewhere about $9 million. Right, because we still have certain infrastructure up. We have to rent lighting, we have to rent security at the Cove especially, and we still have some of the contractors on the ground working on the oil spill.
Okay, question. Is the conversation still open for more funding to be given to the THA in light of what you just highlighted?
Based on how I know the government operates, after the mid-year review, that is it. Because I don't know that they supplement the appropriations again, because you know they'll have to go back to Parliament. But what I am hoping for is that through the IOPC, that we'll be able to access additional funding from that avenue. Because Chanel contractors are calling us every day. They call me, they call team of staff, they call procurement. Contractors want their funding. I don't know if you're aware, also we had to find about $15 million under contingencies. That was only able to pay 6 contractors. Because the major high-level cleanup that you were seeing on the coastline, some of those persons were only paid for February. As a matter of fact, I'm speaking here not only as chief management accountant, but there's a multidisciplinary oversight oil spill committee, of which I'm a part, and I am the finance person. It's a multidisciplinary, so there is someone from the Division of Health, someone from the environment, someone from procurement. So we have various persons within the Tobago House of Assembly, various professionals who make up that team, and we oversee the oil spill, how it's being managed. Right? So based on that, I'm hoping that the government will provide additional funding from the claims that we have to make from the IOPC.
All right, Dr. Pate, talk to us. Has any discussion happened between the THA and the central government on the actual allocation of that IOP fund?
So what you've recognized is that a lot of people are playing smart with foolishness and using a lot of fancy words and talk around to speak about what is actually happening. The chief secretary has indicated that one of the first meetings, or we don't even know how many meetings they've had. There was a meeting in England or London, I think, where we knew nothing about it, and the only reason we knew about it is because the chief sec, his luggage got lost while traveling. He went out to try to find a suit to go to the engagements that he went to the UK for, and while there he saw someone from the Ministry of Energy and asked, "Hey, what are you doing here?" And that is when we recognized a high-level meeting was actually happening in the UK. So let's just say,
and the chief secretary was not invited.
And the chief secretary was not only not invited, but we did not know. A couple of weeks later, we are seeing a picture, headlines, where those individuals came apparently to Trinidad and Tobago. So it's not even, we don't want to incur the cost to go to England or wherever. They actually, representatives were in Trinidad and Tobago. And the only reason we knew about it is because we saw the pictures and we saw the news article. The same time the rest of Trinidad and Tobago saw the pictures and saw the news articles. So that is why I am not convinced. You see, people, you have to judge people based on how they behave. The behavior thus far has shown that they are not really willing to have us included in the kinds of conversations that would get us to, for example, outlining what Ms. Roberts just outlined. Because I am sure most people did not recognize that what we actually asked for mid-year review was 300 million. Because the conversation has been swayed in such a way to say that we only asked for 150 or so million and only got the 50 million for oil spill, and conveniently left out the fact that there was 100 million included for owed contractors and the 50 million included for the overdraft fees that we are getting. So we are not convinced. I mean, I hope I'm wrong. I pray that we are wrong. I hope that coming after this interview this morning, somebody looks at us, somebody sees us, maybe Senator Hislop sees this interview and others see this interview and say, well, okay, we now understand what is happening and we now have a greater, a clearer picture of what is happening and why we requested that 300 million to say, well, okay, let's come back to the table and have this kind of genuine, honest conversation. I would like to highlight one other quick thing, though. The Tobago House of Assembly Act, coming out of the DRC's ruling how many years ago, indicated that the Tobago House of Assembly should be getting between 4.03 and 6.9% of whatever the government of Trinidad and Tobago spends. So if you look back at the documentation that came out for this mid-year review, it's about $2.3 billion. And even if you go to the basic bottom figure, 4.03% of that is closer to 100 million than it is to the 50 million that we were even allocated. So even on that basic level, the government is going against the rules or the laws of Trinidad and Tobago as it relates to the allocations provided to the Tobago House of Assembly. But going back to your original question, no, we have not been involved in those conversations. And I am hoping that this conversation on air will allow us to get back to the table so that we could truly represent the needs of Tobago.
Okay, and this is where my other question comes in, because I was going to ask for clarity. So overall, the figure that was requested was 300 million.
Yes.
And of the 300 million, only 50 million was allocated?
That's correct.
Yep.
Okay, understood.
So can I just say quickly, for those who are listening, especially those who are contractors in Tobago, who they meet me. I mean, people who I don't even know were contractors are meeting me and asking me for their money. Remember when we got into this and we did when we looked at the debt of the Tobago House of Assembly, from day one, it was close to $1 billion of owed monies that we came into the Tobago House of Assembly meeting at our doorsteps. So even the 100 million, for example, that was given last fiscal in the mid-year review to pay contractors, that was done, that was paid out in addition to the additional 20-something million that they found miraculously to pay. So the 20-something million that Miss Roberts spoke about is outside of what we got the 100 million last year to pay. And it means we still have hundreds of millions of dollars of unpaid contractors out there, which is why we asked for the additional 100 million this year, just to pay contractors.
Yes.
So we see it is those, when I said we kind of playing smart with foolishness, we are not really having the honest, genuine conversations about this. Those are the little kind of sleights of hands that I'm talking about.
Well, Dr. Faith, it's like you saw my question coming, because I was just going to ask, how are you actually going to even allocate such a small budget compared to what is given to the persons who have actually played a key role in this oil spill cleanup? Not only that, other contractors who are owed. But that's a question for both ladies.
Well, for me, what we do is first in, first out. So and it's difficult because we had more contractors engaged in February. And how do I determine who to pay? Because there's a contractor that called me and said, I heard y'all are paying, I haven't received. Now, mind you, we have also internally tried to shift funding because persons are calling us. Some of them are on the brink. The bank is coming for them. They have their bills to pay. So in some cases, we have tried to honor some of these invoices. Others, I've told contractors, we just do not have the funding. We'll have to wait on the government. We are in June. We have not received the 50 million. I want Tobago to understand. We haven't yet received it. There's a process, both on the government side and both on our budgets and finance side. So when we receive the funding, then internally we will try as quickly as possible to fast track. But to answer your question, we honor the February releases first. There are February releases. We are in June that we have not yet honored, and these people are calling us. And I also want to kind of outline to Tobago the type of expenditure that we have had. So we have the high level and heavy equipment. So those heavy contractors, those with the high tech equipment to treat with the oil spill cleanup, those were more significant. And then we had to rent and lease infrastructure. We had to rent tents. We had to rent bathroom facilities. We had to rent lighting, particularly at Cove and Lowlands. We had to rent trucks. There are some Tobago contractors who said, I'm not putting my truck in the salt water because of the effects of that, the negative effects of that. We have swim call. We had a lot of contractors that we had to rent equipment from. Then materials and supplies. There are some materials and supplies we would have had to purchase on spot. At a point in time, but we have since cut it out, we had to provide meals for TEMA staff. TEMA staff were working 24 hours to the point where I know 2 staff personally that fell ill because they are going nonstop. We have the marine support. We have those persons in the Tobago Fisher Folk and marine industry that provided support for the boom deployment. So we receive booms from the high-tech companies, but the deployment of the booms and to give that support to these companies, we have those people to pay. At the onset of the oil spill, we also had to provide accommodation for some of the contractors. They didn't have anywhere to stay, and we really needed the support in terms of accommodation. Also, I must say that TEMA and us staff, they worked 24 hours tirelessly, and therefore they were asking for some form of additional compensation, which we are also considering, something like an honorarium. So all of this is included. Then we continue to have requests from people for compensation. We have restaurants who have lost income during the time. We have persons who are coming to us and saying, because of the oil spill, this is my situation. So we still have those requests. So those are some of the expenditure that we have in terms of the oil spill. And I'm saying that we have not yet been able to pay. We have to wait on the 50 million to continue these payments.
All right, we're going to take a quick break right here, and we will return and continue our conversation right after this. See you soon, guys. Welcome back to Good Morning Tobago. We continue our conversation asking the question, is 50 million enough to not only cover oil spill expenses, but now we know that we have lots of contractors that still need to pay. To be paid. Dr. Faith, before we round up this morning's discussion, I want to ask you, because there have been the narrative or the conversation out there that this administration, though complaining about never having money, has gotten the most money of any previous administration. Can you touch on that a bit?
Certainly. Again, another sleight of hand, another playing smart with foolishness. This is basic maths. The expenditure of the government of Trinidad and Tobago during the period that we have been here has actually been higher, generally. So let's go back to basic maths. The Tobago House of Assembly, we're supposed to get between 4.03 to 6.9. So let's just go with the 4%. If the government total has $10 and we are going to get 4% of the $10, that is one figure. If the government now has $100 and we're going to get 4% of the $100, obviously that is going to be, in terms of actual dollar figure, more money. But it also means that all of us, not just the Tobago House of Assembly, but every single ministry in the government also got more money during that period. And that is exactly what happened. The government spending, or the estimated spending for the fiscal was more. So obviously the Tobago House of Assembly got more in terms of actual dollar figure. But if you look at the percentage wise of it, it was the same bottom of the barrel, 4.03. Sometimes it's you have to wonder, when people say these things, do they really think that we are stupid? Honestly, do they really think that we are stupid? Because yes, we got more dollar, but we're still at the bottom of the barrel, and they still have not gone above the 4.03. And in fact, we also still have to live with the increased inflation rates, the increased cost of everything, the fact that we have procurement legislation now, which makes everything more difficult and honestly seems to be making things more expensive because of the processes that we have to go through and so forth. So it is not that we have more money and we're just spending it willy-nilly. The more money is not even sufficient for what we need, basically. And that is why at every budget reading, at least since we've been here, the Secretary for Finance has been able to estimate, with the technocrats, has been able to estimate, this is how much we think the government would have. This is what we think if we were in the middle of 5% or 5.5%. And we have always pegged our budget to that middle of the range, so that we are not just dealing with the bottom of the barrel, 4.03% of the budget every year.
All right, and let me shift gears a bit to our representatives in the parliament. What do you think because we saw Dr. Remy standing up in the parliament last week and making a bold stand, making bold claims on behalf of Tobagonians about why it is so important for Tobago to be given what Tobago deserves, particularly when the government is going to international agencies to seek funding for Tobago at a particular rate and then giving Tobago only $50 million. What do you think can be done by our representatives to begin to advocate, specifically when we see senators like Senator Lawrence Hislop saying in the parliament that what has been given based on the ministry's assessment is enough?
Well, I think Tobagonians are the ones that are going to have to figure out what we want our representatives to do. It is clear that there are representatives in the parliament that represent their party and themselves. It is clear that there are other representatives who represent Tobago, and I would actually like to publicly commend Dr. Remy for her interjection last week when she made that presentation. But Tobagonians, you are the one who needs to ask yourself, when you send somebody down to Trinidad as a Tobago East or Tobago West representative, who do you want them to represent? Do you want them to represent their political party, or do you want them to represent Tobago? And that is a question you have to ask yourself coming up into the next general election that we will have. But it is also something that you have to be honest about. Because the way to deal with this is they could have simply called Faith, this thing that all you said, what that really about? Help me understand it now. Go in and present in the House next week. Help me understand what we're talking about. Why? That has not happened, and because that has not happened, we are not hearing anything from them, and what we do hear from them does not represent Tobago. Remember, I did not say that they need to advocate on behalf of the Tobago House of Assembly or the administration that runs the Tobago House of Assembly. The people who are representatives in Parliament need to represent Tobago, the whole island of Tobago, and they have not been doing that.
Okay, well, you said a lot there. And we're going to take a break here, and we're going to continue with our show this morning. Guys, see you soon.
Go, go.